Good evening. We're talking with the Libertarian Lesbian, coming to us from the Midwest, undisclosed location. So, give us a little idea what made you become a libertarian. I understand you kind of made a political metamorphosis, I don't know how long ago, but what's changed in your mind in terms of defining yourself politically? Whether that has to do with your identity, sexual orientation, or what have you.
Well, I've kind of considered myself a libertarian since high school, but I kind of got sucked into the liberal mindset, which was identity politics a little bit, and I didn't realize it. I thought I had kind of pushed away politics and then started talking about social issues, but when I started realizing the social issues were very political, or Democrats wanted to fund certain things, Planned Parenthood being one of them, and looking into a lot of nonprofits that funnel their way through causes. Then I started to wake up around 2016 more. So I've definitely moved way further to the right than even the article I had written about not being a liberal anymore. I think a lot of people have, because I think it seems like everybody went way too left. I don't know what they're doing, but I definitely see the progression of what they're trying to obtain. It seems more like socialism, communism, bigger government, and that's not what I was going for. So that was a huge wake-up call for me. That's pretty much what did it. And I've just kind of I moved further to the right a little bit at a time this year just by learning more. So that was my main issue, the left.
So did any of this come in part, like, or are you in college, or are you doing any like academic programs? Is it because of maybe people that you've been exposed to more, or is it because of observation of the media?
Yeah, so I had moved to Utah for a few years, and so I was around in Salt Lake, that college town. I didn't go to a university, but I was around those people, and what I noticed from people I had worked with, because I was a server at restaurants, so they were college kids, and I was like, God, these people are so entitled and whiny, and I thought maybe it was just the times, or just the economic status is a lot different than where I'm from, so I know that has something to do with it, the affluence. And then when I started learning what social justice warriors were, I had no idea. I found through Milo back when he was like on Joe Rogan, and then that kind of progressed to like the Steven Crowders and things like that. And I remember seeing those crazy like left wing feminists, and I just thought they were like weird lesbians, so I just kind of stayed away from them. But it turns out they have like a whole system of philosophy where everyone's a victim, and there's this whole fight the patriarchy. I had no idea that existed. I mean, where I'm from, the most left anyone goes is like libertarian. And people are Democrats around here, but they're still conservative in the way they live. So yeah, if I hadn't been around that college town to see it for myself, I wouldn't have believed these people actually existed, and they were so ridiculous. So that was the first thing. And the way they started going on protests right after Trump was elected, I'm like, you guys, even if people were, anti both candidates, you knew somebody was going to be disappointed. And I was aware enough to know that where I'm from, a lot of people supported Trump, but they were completely in a bubble, and going to win. It's weird. It's so weird.
Right, and one of the things that this interview, I think, is we're trying to talk about politics and identity, and not only you being, I guess, a self-identifying lesbian, but also now a libertarian. So at the time you were observing these social justice warriors, were you openly gay? Did people, or were you vocally gay? I think there's a difference between people who like, they know, people know that you're gay, and then there's people that are, like Milo Yiannopoulos is flamboyantly gay. So was this something that, were you part of a community of people talk about the gay community, and like in Salt Lake, I imagine it's not as big as in other places because it's a kind of Mormon state. But
well,
was
more in
this?
Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, because I went to my first like pride parade there and stuff. Yeah, no, I tried. I always idealized this whole gay community because I could, supposedly I've been told there are people like me, but I've been around enough groups to know that that's not the case. There's always I have friends of like all different kinds. Most of them are straight, so yeah, people knew I was gay, but it wasn't like a huge thing that I had to announce. And no, I didn't participate in the gay community. Everybody got on my nerves. Everyone is an emotional wreck, and they're just all the same. And I always thought that was weird. It's all cult like. It's kind of like a subculture. So no, I wasn't like that. But everybody knew, and I don't know, just kind of talked to everybody. So it's not really political standpoints, except for I kind of thought the gay marriage thing, but I was in high school when I was kind of manipulated into buying that, so I don't think I had any effect on it. But no, I've always just kind of been on my own as far as that goes. It's hard for me to relate to people just because of I guess sexual orientation. I don't understand that how people could do that. And even though I'm like wearing a flannel shirt, I am more feminine, so no, it doesn't stand out. Usually I do have to come out just to if we if I'm having a conversation about something just to get an idea of me. But so I don't stand out, and then there's a lot of women in the gay community that think that's weird and that I should look like a dude, and I never understood that either. So I've always kind of been the odd one out anyway, and I'm pretty vocal when I believe something. So now it should be interesting, and the reason why I wanted to put the fact that I am a lesbian in the title is so I can get through to those people on the left that wouldn't listen to other people otherwise. There's a lot of things that a lot of far right, old white dudes are saying that they're not going to hear because they're not going to reach out to that. So if I could bring some of that, and I'm like, look, this makes sense though, maybe stop hating men for a second, then maybe I can help people because I think that most gays and lesbians are more libertarian, um, or have some conservative beliefs anyway. They're just being brainwashed into believing that everything conservative is evil. So
Yeah, I actually, if you see the image I'm pulling up here, this isn't because I'm screwing with you, but this was one of the first Pulp Fiction novels that involved two women, and it was called Odd Girl Out. Kind of ironic, given what you're saying, but it's almost as if it comes full circle because I've always I'd say I never supported gay rights just because I didn't care, and I've always thought it's more like people should just say whatever they want and let the chips fall where they may. But I think that really after the legalization of same-sex marriage by the Supreme Court, a lot of us who, by that time I was a little more conservative when I was in high school and Al Gore was running, I was probably more liberal. So when the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage, I was like, well, I don't really care anymore. It's the Supreme Court who did it. It doesn't affect my life. I don't have to be happy with it, but I don't have to make a huge fuss out of it. Do you think that at that point the gay rights movement kind of changed because a real milestone had been accomplished and many of the things that had been for years gay activists had fought for them? Well, after this, what comes next? Was that something you experienced, or is it something that just looks like that from the outside for straight people?
no, yeah, I experienced it. I remember hearing people on the right say what comes next, and I thought it was ridiculous because I didn't see anything coming next. But it seems like after that happened, the floodgates opened, and then here come the gender queers and the trannies and everything that I guess was brewing in these think tanks at colleges. I had no idea. I mean, um, I also didn't think that I think I was too young with the marriage thing when they were proposing it to see that it was completely unavoidable, and we could do common law marriages. Most gay people don't really care that much about it, honestly. This is all lobbyists and whatever their agendas are, because we could have accomplished some of the same things. They tried to make it seem more of a social issue, like we're such victims and stuff, and it scares you when you're young in high school, and but we really aren't any more than anyone else. So there are extra rights, and I know the Supreme Court did push it through unconstitutionally, and yeah, that whole thing, it did change. And then you had, of course, like those people that would go around in places and ask them to cater their wedding, and found the one that said no, and just so they could write a story on it and get a lot of attention. I didn't know that was the case for it, but that's really sick. I never wanted to infringe on anyone's religious beliefs. That wasn't supposed to be the case. So it's all manipulation. And it did change. Something did shift after that, because even now that the trans movement, or whatever that is, a lot of gay people have issues with that, because it is just pushing through something that's really, really illogical. I mean, I understand that being gay is illogical to some people, but this, like giving hormones to kids and allowing, anyone to come into a women's dress room or a locker room or anything, that's what I saw. And I saw a huge victim mentality of younger people, a lot of them not even being gay in the first place, just making stuff up about gender or whatever. That's very bizarre.
Yeah, we'll actually get to the gender issue too. We talked a lot about that with another YouTuber last week, Alicia Clegg. If you want to go back and look at that later, and I'm sure Alicia might want to have you on her channel as well once she gets her privileges back from the YouTube KGB. But until then, yeah, I think with the gay marriage thing, the only benefit that I think anybody, like me personally, now when people say to me, well, why aren't you getting married? I just say to them, didn't you hear marriage is gay now? So you guys are the other gay people. So it's kind of, I kind of riff on it as a joke, but I don't really see how it's, other than the court cases you're talking about, I don't see how it really changed America, but the media made it seem like America had changed. And in reality, I think that, after that, there was the whole issue of transgenderism, like you said, really came to the forefront. I just want to say that we have Dade Murphy, Captain Dadepool, as he calls himself now, is in the chat. He says that his daughter is an open lesbian in the U.S. Air Force, but relatively conservative. It must be an I-win thing. He wants to know how old you are. I don't know if this is some sort of matchmaking ploy or something, but, maybe. You know what, Dade? I think we'll reserve this conversation for later. But in any case,
Yeah,
so
that's fine. It's so funny. I get parents trying to set me up with their kids more than I have people ask me out.
He says
whether
no.
It's guys or girls. That's what it's. No, okay. No, I'm just to, yeah, no, I understand, because it is, being gay and conservative is different. So it's good to have. I'm 28, so.
So she said, oh, he said that you look his daughter's age, and okay, so there's the answer, and he just called me a retard too. So
that's funny.
He said that's not why he asked.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to meet people that are, well, it's like we have to come out as conservative. I've heard a lot of people say that. So yeah, it makes sense that if she's in like the military, she would be a lot more logical and not be a crazy liberal. So that's cool.
Well, then, I mean, is it still hard to? I mean, you call yourself a libertarian, but you're around a lot of conservatives. Is it difficult in any way still to, be openly a lesbian and be around conservatives in your community? Do people kind of badger you the way, I remember when I was a kid, there was a lot of the Jay and Silent Bob movies made fun of that. So is that kind of still a thing where you live?
Yeah, they don't get it. And even my my family, they, even when people are supportive, they're just kind of weird about it. And the one thing that I see going on here is people here are trying to be this kind of open-minded sort of thing, and it's weird. I think they should stop because there's no real conversation happening. So I think, as far as the personal life thing, I didn't move back here after the Utah thing. So yeah, no, people are they just don't know. But a lot of them, like I said, are Democrats, and a lot of them don't even understand half of what we're talking about as far as politics and identity politics, and how bad, even if they are conservative or Republican, they don't understand who it is that's coming through, that's pushing for socialism and stuff. So just in general, without my political or whatever, it's hard to talk to people these days. There's a lot of people that just don't get it. I would love to help Mikey and the state to go toward a more right wing kind of situation where you have smaller government, because I think they just kind of stopped caring. But yeah, as far as me personally, I don't think people get it. But once people get to know me, I mean, I think they're just intimidated. They think I'm going to be some kind of crazy, like, pushy person. So once they find out that's not the case, it's usually okay.
Yeah, I think that generally a lot of the hardcore, fundamentalist Christians, their influence kind of waned after 2012, and that's what I've experienced. I mean, not that the issue that drove me from being more of a liberal, the way I was when I was growing up in the early '90s, had nothing to do with any of those issues like LGBT and whatever. What drove me to stop being a liberal was, observing Al Gore being just the sore loser that he was, and then later, after the 2000 election, that was before I could vote. I had no political affiliation for years, and then Ron Paul came along and he talked about making a foreign policy that was less interventionist, freeing the economy more, giving more freedoms, civil liberties, and economic freedoms to people. Did any of that factor into your political metamorphosis, or was it more of just those social justice warrior things and some of the zany stuff that we'll talk about in due time?
Um, yeah, Ron Paul he got huge around the time that I was like just getting out of high school, and I remember talking to some of my friends about it, even around, because I was still in Kentucky, a small place, and a lot of people my age were really resonating with it.
Yeah, we couldn't hear you.
And,
You're having like a connection problem.
oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. Let me see what I do. Yeah, it seemed like, and because no one's really trusted a lot of the jobs sent away, people just kind of block it off. So that was huge. And I remember everybody kind of talking about it because Facebook was big then too. Something Facebook, and I know that a lot of things are coming out, had kind of veered everyone away with whatever weird experiments they do too, because they were doing, I've read some studies on them doing that. But yeah, Ron Paul had a huge effect. I kept up with him because it didn't seem as like orientation. It seemed like Republicans were just, everybody was just too out there. They didn't care about what was going on in these communities. They're actors, and that made me look into libertarianism. That limited government, not giving them the power that they could use to eventually hurt us, which is what they do. They're very inefficient. And then of course, Rand Paul after that. So yeah, he did have a huge effect on me. I had stayed out of learning about politics for a while though, because I had moved, and then I was just working and trying to make a living. So that's when the social issues took hold. But yeah, I still follow Ron Paul. He's very cool.
We're having a lot of emotional outpouring from Dade Murphy here. And, he's feeling very Mufasa-like right now because he says you remind him of his daughter, which I thought we'd take a moment to note that. But,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, he's like, really, that's very nice, man. I'm going to troll him for the rest of the interview. But I think
I'll have to check out the chat in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we also have Lennon McCarthy here. Thanks for coming here. Lennon McCarthy is a former Bernie bro. So before you were a libertarian, did you have a political affiliation at all?
No, because I'd started saying I was libertarian when I was like probably 17 or something. So I didn't know what I was before then. That's pretty much what I became. That's what I grew up to be.
So the other things that we're talking about today, I don't think that, well, some of them would have to do with sexual orientation. And some of them I think just have to do with living in a civil society or something. So I don't know if this was a big story in your neck of the woods last year, but I happen to be Jewish, and there's a thing called the, well, there's a lot of really, 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 really feminist Jewish women, which might explain why there's so many single Jewish people. But in any case, there was this Dyke March in Chicago, which happens, I think, annually in the summer. And a couple ladies were there, and they were asked to leave because they wouldn't join into this chant talking about Palestine at the Dyke March, which, I guess, I don't know. As a lesbian, how important is Palestine to you? Is that here and
it's
there.
Like foreign policy stuff. I feel like I don't really know enough. I like hearing people argue between the Israel-Palestine thing, though. It's eventually I'd like to learn more, but I don't know.
Well, in the event, I wouldn't say people should not care about things that they do care about, but what they did was, first of all, they kicked this, I don't know if it was 2 women or more, but they kicked a number of them out because they had a Jewish flag or a gay flag with the Jewish symbol on it, the Star of David. And
I heard about that. Okay.
Yeah, that was, if you forgive me, I thought it was kind of just a funny situation because the march itself is deliberately done without a permit. And then you have these people complaining about getting kicked out of it, but the thing's illegal anyway, so who cares? So I thought, it's a wash. And but it was a huge deal. And it said, upon arrival at the rally location in Piotrowski Park, Palestinian marchers approached those carrying the flags to learn about their intentions due to its similarity to the Israeli flag and the flag's long history of use in pinkwashing efforts. Pinkwashing is when, apparently on the Palestine side, they say that the Israelis try to use their gay rights record in order to not divert attention from war crimes and things like that. So during the conversation, the individuals asserted their Zionist stance and support for Israel. At this point, Jewish allies and Dyke March organizers stepped in to help explain why Zionism was unacceptable at the march. And then they go into italics. It said there was an earnest attempt at engagement with these marchers, and the decision to ask them to leave was not made abruptly or arbitrarily throughout a 2-hour so they're there in the sun for 2 hours at a Dyke March talking about this nonsense. The individuals were told that the march was explicitly anti-Zionist and that if they were not okay with that, they should leave. And then they go on, they say Zionism is an inherently white supremacist ideology. It is based on the premise that Jewish people have a God-given entitlement to the lands of historic Palestine and the surrounding area. And it goes on and on and on, whatever. I happen to be half Iraqi. So, maybe I'm, knockoff white or, Costco white or something. But, I thought it was pretty funny reading it. And I thought, a lot of people were having this outpouring of sympathy for these women who went to the Dyke March, and they're like, we want to be friggin' out there with our flag or whatever. When you heard about this, did you think that it was a big deal, or did you think it kind of made the Dyke March seem a little just ridiculous in general?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what was going on there. It's kind of it's kind of a wash. I think I didn't really even know. I don't know why there has to be a Dyke Mark. I don't know a march. I would think that it would just be social issues and getting together and support or something. I didn't think that they would get into foreign policy, but I think that's what happens when gay people finally start talking about real life and they realize that none of us have anything in common just like anyone else. So, but then that whole white supremacy type thing seems to be coming in through those the same venue like the colleges and stuff or wherever it's coming from where that's just used to kind of discredit whatever. So it seems white here. Let's get rid of it. Let's shut it down. That's what it kind of seems like too. So I don't really know what the deal was. I'm sure one side had to be more confused than the other. One side had to know what they were doing, you know. So I'm confused all around. I mean, and what a specific march. I mean, I don't understand what the march contains. That they like advertise their like locally owned lesbian businesses or talk about how they help the community, or is it just a bunch of women with mullets walking down the road? I don't really get it. I never really got anything like that. I don't understand. I could
Well,
look into it. I probably sound stupid. It's fine, but
I don't.
I'm not looking
I
at it.
think really the issue is that the gay organizations, what they try to do is they form a community identity, and um, obviously nobody here or in the chat is going to ask you for proof that you are what you say you are. But I think with them, these identity groups, and I have the same issue with the Anti-Defamation League, because they claim to represent all Jewish people, and I identify more by my economic beliefs than whether some group can complain about issues like poop swastikas or something. So what happened with the Dyke March, and I remember reading about it a long time ago, was that back in the 80s or so, uh, a lot of these women were upset that the gay parades were more about these these flamboyant dudes that were dressed up like Liberace or worse or something, and they were taking all the attention. They were hogging the attention. So they made a Dyke March. Sometimes there was the Dykes on Bikes thing where they'd have a woman who basically looks you know um, uh, like that guy from the NYPD detective Dennis Franz, if you know who I'm talking about. That might be a little before your time, but
Mm-mm.
they're basically a little
Yeah.
heavy set, and some of the
Yeah.
you
I
know
know
what I'm
that
talking.
yeah, Dykes with Bikes I've heard of. Yeah. Yeah, no, and I get that. I think also the because the gay community putting lesbians and gay men together in general is a problem sometimes, a lot of times, because we don't really hang out that much anyway, and we're completely different. If you think about two men being together, they're a lot more. They party, and there's more party, drugs, and sex on that side. And over on the lesbian side, it's like, well, we have cats and we move in really early and then we settle down. It's just like how you would think that it would be. So it gets weird. They get annoying, the old attention seeking of the gay men. And then I do know that in a lot of marches with all of us together, there was a problem in the 90s, and it's happening again. There's always these like pedophiles who want to try to get into whatever group they can. They're like rats, and they were trying to join the march. The lesbians were the only ones that were getting them out because the gay men are just whatever, getting blown behind a dumpster by another dude or whatever they do. And the lesbians had to work really hard to get those pedophiles out of there because they keep trying to come back to whatever. I think they've resurfaced in the LGBT community huge. I think there's a huge problem that a lot of gay people need to wake up to. And I think they've gotten high rankings, and I think it's an issue, the lobbyists and everything. Um, So that could be a reason too. And I do know that some women are lesbians just for political reasons, which has to do with feminism, and that started with that whole postmodern idea that happened kind of around even as early as like the 1920s. It started to get a little weird, because yeah, I think that's probably an issue. I know that because lesbians and gay men don't really have that much in common at all.
Yeah, I've observed that, and one of the weird things is I think that there's a difference. There are a lot of very militant lesbians that hate men, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
what's very ironic is that there's very few men that hate lesbians, and there's quite a few that happen to be very fond of lesbians. But in any case, the real issue that I'm seeing as well is that that you still have GLAAD and you have all these organizations that claim to represent the gay community, but the Pulse nightclub shooting happened. I thought it was pretty grotesque scene, obviously. Very surreal issue, but it kind of encapsulated this clash with the Islam and the gay people and the questions about whether the shooter was also gay or whatever. But there was traditionally there was the reputation that a lot of these gay people were criminals. When I was a kid, there was a serial killer. Hold on, I have to approve these comments for some reason. But there's a gay serial killer named Andrew Cunanan, and then there was so a lot of the time spent in these universities is talking about how these people are represented. They're like, oh, they're represented negatively. They're either too masculine or too feminine or whatever. So when you think about the media representation of either gay people or lesbians, there's of course a lot of movies that I think sensationalize it because you're going to get a lot of male viewers for these lesbian movies, and then the militant lesbians say, well, that's not really what it's like. Do you think that it's kind of been overexposed now, or what's your take on that? Do you think that the whole gay agenda, or sorry if I say gay agenda because I know that's like
That's
I can
fine.
get you banned.
I've been using that lately. It used to irk me, but now that I kind of get it.
Well, I was apologizing to YouTube because if you don't get offended, they'll get offended on your behalf.
So, okay, yeah, they won't even ask me.
Right.
I know.
So I'm apologizing to the gay YouTube, and I'm apologizing to the guest in the chat. But what do you think about that? Do you think it is getting overexposed because now you're having gay cartoons and things like that for children on the Disney Channel? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I do think it is. I don't think the kids really need to know about anything as far as sexuality yet. I mean, that should be up to the parents. Then again, the parents should watch the kids and what they watch, but it's so ridiculous to see. Like, we make up such a small percent of the population, and to see every single show has their token gay, which is it's kind of like how I guess Black people felt a little bit as far as that goes. They just kind of throw them in there. It's really insincere anyway. That's what I've always thought. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to watch the show now because there's a gay person in it. I'm not watching that crappy show. So that's what I noticed. Anyway, it gets on my nerves. It's completely disingenuous. I've seen a few shows like The L Word. It was made by a lesbian. It was very honest. It wouldn't fly today in the PC world because they're very honest about the negatives and positives, like any relationships or friendships go. I don't like that they idealize anything and even to say that whole "it gets better" movement is crazy, because you can't say it gets better for anybody in life.
Yeah, shit happens.
Yeah, no, it's just not. They've kind of pushed this thing where it's like, oh, so you come out now and it's gonna be hard, but now you're good because you figured out what's wrong with you. And they're doing the same thing with the trans thing, where it's like, oh, so you're supposed to do this and transition, so now you're gonna do it and you're gonna be happy. It's all about happy. It's all about utopia, and it's not like that. And I've seen, and it just becomes propaganda, where it's like, oh, see, Ellen seems like a nice person, and meanwhile she's just reading off of cards on a regular daytime generic TV show. It's so stupid. It's so it's so not like, it's like they're not even asking us. It's like if there's independent movies or something that's good, because all movies kind of suck now and mainstream TV is awful. Those are usually good, you know, when they talk about real life, you know, life is raw, life isn't great all the time. Um, and then I've seen it being pushed on like online through certain groups that'll say, I've seen someone share like kids of gay parents turn out better and things like that. I'm like, are you kidding me? There hasn't even been enough studies and enough time to, it just becomes propaganda. I've gotten into so many arguments with liberal straight people about, I'm saying this is idealizing it, and they'll argue with me about it. It's gotten way out of hand because it has nothing to do with us. It's all about the agenda. It's all about whatever these gay groups want, even if they're not full of gay people anymore. It's stupid.
Yeah, I think when you brought up the L word, and I think one of the reasons that it was a success was because it trolled straight men who would watch the show by kind of making fun of them sometimes, and you know, giving them enough bait and eye candy, while at the same time making fun of them for basically watching the show. And it was a huge success because of that. And nowadays, because of the splintering, the internal splintering that you're talking about with the postmodernism, I think I'd have to agree. It probably would not really either it would cause a lot of anger, or it would end up basically not getting the audience that it did back in the day. But the other show that I think really affected, you know, for many people, South Park. I grew up with South Park, and they would make fun of every single community, didn't matter what religion or creed or whatever. And I think it got me to realize I don't care about this debate. It's like I'll make whatever jokes I have to, and if people want to live their life otherwise, you know, there's nothing I can do to change it. Do you think that you know, there's a talk about the South Park Republican or South Park Libertarian? Do you find a lot of people like that don't care about your lifestyle, but they're not, you know, these quote unquote allies that they talk about on the left?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their allies are some of the worst. They could be detrimental to any movement. And I've heard the term virtue signaling. It makes sense. And they're just trying to be martyrs. They need to focus on their own lives. And I don't know what the whole movement was of trying to get allies. I don't understand what exactly they want people to fight for. So they're fighting for things that they aren't, and they have no idea what they're talking about. And they just pat themselves on the back, and you know, they just have the same thing else. So I'm like, geez, it's gotten out of hand. I didn't notice the L word when you were saying I made fun of men. I see straight women make fun of men more. I think they have more of a problem because they have to deal with it on TV shows and stuff like that. So I didn't notice that in the show when I watched it at all. I was more, they show negatives of being gay too, and I don't think that it's almost allies and the LGBT groups would shut it down because they want everything to seem like unicorns and rainbows.
Yeah, I think one of the funniest issues back when they were both on was that people were thinking, you know, people were making it a joke that Sex and the City is actually written by gay guys, because the straight women who are in the show, it's not very common that they would talk that dirty about their sex lives in such a way. Like,
that's pretty much like a gay man.
Right. And then the other joke, I think, was that the show, what was the other show that was on? It was kind of a show about more Mexicans. It was there was Chappelle's show was kind of like the show where black comedy kind of became too white or something. But I think I might be overstepping it. But yeah, that was like an era where there were a lot of amazing shows, and then but people tried to copy some of them, not so much the L word, but other ones. And in terms of maybe more accurately with lesbians in the media, there is Ellen, there is Rosie O'Donnell, there is some people are making rumblings about Oprah, meaning literally everybody who watches Oprah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about those people representing the community as media figures in and of themselves? Do they seem to at least give a fair representation, or is it like you don't want to be represented, you just want to have your own ideas?
Yeah, I don't want to be represented, especially the more I learn about them. I mean, they're all kind of benign anyway. I mean, Rosie has gone completely off the rails. And I don't know anything about these people. I don't see them as I don't know what they're into, especially since they're in Hollywood. So they could be creeps. And I and it's the same with a lot of gay men. I mean, you'll see politicians that get caught getting like blown in the bathroom and then they're like, "Oh, I'm gay." Well, maybe you're just like a pervert. So it's the same way I think sometimes with lesbians. I don't know. They don't I feel nothing as far as that goes. Maybe I did a little bit when I was younger, but now I'm like, there's a possibility that they could not be gay too, and they're just kind of doing it for that happens. I don't know these people in Hollywood. I don't think that they should represent anyone. I don't think anyone in Hollywood should represent anyone. So I think idealizing them is something that we've been taught to do from a young age, and we need to stop because we don't know these people. They could be evil.
Right, and I don't know, we talked a little off the air, but I don't know if you're a sports fan, but there is a guy who is he's a sports I wouldn't call him a columnist. I guess he's a podcaster now on Fox, and his name is Clay Travis, and he said that one of the problems with progressivism and culture is that at a certain point they started to make it as if advances for, let's say, the gay community became the most important thing. He said that, and are you an NFL fan, for example? Do you watch football at all?
No.
So there was. So this might seem a little like news to you. So I'll tell you so that the chat might have already known about this. But there was a player who was drafted in 2014 named Michael Sam, who was from Missouri, and he was the first player to openly enter the draft gay. And a lot of people in the media started hyping this up as if it's the great, he's the new Jackie Robinson and everything. And
I remember that.
yeah, okay, so one of the things I remember, and there were a number of turning points that caused me to, realize that the media is completely eaten this whole political pill, the blue pill, was when I was listening to the radio driving home from a place I was working. And the announcer, Amy Lawrence for CBS Radio, said, well, we're going to talk about this great moment in sports, and I'm going to open up the lines, but I don't want to hear anybody talk about how gay people don't deserve to be in the locker room, or this could be a problem for the team, or that this really isn't that important. She only wants supporting comments. And I think, Clay Travis also used that, ironically, as a watershed moment for me. And that was the moment I saw that the gay rights movement had completely jumped the shark. So do you think that it's ever going to be just a situation where people just listen to you for what you're talking about, or has the well been poisoned?
Yeah, I remember the Michael Sam thing, but it was more from what I was seeing. I didn't care about sports, so I'm like, okay, cool, but you can't say that he's the first, like acting like he's the first gay person ever. It's like usually people just kind of go to sports. I don't understand why he was propped up so much. So there had to be something with that. And then, of course, the media just wants to go on anything that'll get them ratings. So, yeah, I mean, there's no way that he was the first gay one. So I don't understand why there's so much national attention about it. That's so confusing. And plus, I'm like, I don't know anything about football. I don't know if he's good or not. So it's cool, but Yeah, I don't know. It's like they just pick these people, whatever they do to either sell out or they just decide they need something. I don't know how that starts. He's definitely not the only gay person in sports. I mean, people just go into their jobs. I don't get it.
Well, what ended up happening in the event is that Michael Sam, maybe he didn't get the proper chance, but he never actually played a game in the NFL because the team that drafted him ended up releasing him before the season started. I think the St. Louis Rams at the time were the team. Now they moved to LA, but whatever. Then the Dallas Cowboys, I think, picked him up, and he was there for like 5 minutes, and then he was released. And then he never played a snap in the NFL. And what Travis said was that, in reality, Michael Sam, probably a decent guy, never been arrested for anything, unlike a lot of other people in the NFL. But unlike Jackie Robinson, who was black, who had a major problem being harassed and having his family threatened when he came into Major League Baseball. Nobody cared what Michael Sam did in his bedroom as long as he could tackle. He was a linebacker. So, they way, way, way overhyped it. And it was really a dud moment. And then there were other attempts to do it. I remember there was a transsexual person who was originally a woman who competed as a woman in the NCAA. And then when she was becoming a man, then nowadays there's a lot of other transsexual athletes that are competing and winning in women's divisions.
Yeah, that's not okay.
Yeah, so tell me a little about that. I sent you that article on the TERFs. I sent you that article on why I'm skipping the Pride Parade and going to the Dyke March. So how's that feel that you have? I think it's in Texas. There's this person who now considers themselves a dude who won 2 straight state wrestling titles in the girls divisions. Does that kind of chew at the ears of women in general, and you yourself in particular?
Yeah, it's not even just about women. It's just about sportsmanship. I mean, you can't, like, when you have somebody who is biologically male, has those hormones, has bigger, men have a different like stature. They're stronger generally. I mean, overwhelmingly more strong. I don't understand what this is about. I mean, there are plenty of women and men both that think it's ridiculous, especially, and you look at any sports, you look at UFC, it can get dangerous, very dangerous. So there's no way this is okay. This like experimental, like hormonal treatments or whatever doesn't seem to help anyone anyway. And it definitely doesn't turn people into women or men. They're still women and men like they were. So it's not like there's like a magic pill and then you're just all of a sudden you have all of the same biological structures. So it's not okay for anyone. Obviously, it would physically hurt women more because if a woman, but then again, the women take testosterone, but still, I think the men would still pummel over. But then you have these like big men that come in and start wrestling women or whatever. Yeah, no, it's just as a person. It's not really even just as a woman. It's not okay. There's a reason why we have those segregated divisions. I don't really understand why people are trying to push for this. There's no logic at all anymore on the left.
Yeah. I think I know a number of people who consider themselves progressives, and they've kind of diverted their attention from this because because there is a left that is economic. There's a left that's and I've had Carlos on the show who's I think he's a reasonable person so far as I've talked to him, and they generally, I think there is a division on the left between the identitarian left and then there's people who are pushing for more intervention in the economy and things like that. So I think that the postmodernism, if we could get into that, there's this article here from Feminist Current, which I think is a part of the Medium platform, but I'm not sure. And it says turf isn't just a slur, it's hate speech. It says last week a 60-year-old woman was beaten up at Speaker's Corner by Speaker's Corners in London, by the way, by several men. She was there with a group of women who had chosen the historic corner of Hyde Park as a meeting place before heading off to a talk called What is Gender? The men who punched and kicked Maria McLaughlin had come to protest the women on account of, see, what's funny is that it's a feminist article, but they put Adolf Hitler there, who's not exactly the most feminist person, but whatever. So the protesters, or maybe I'm wrong, maybe he was a feminist. The protesters did not frame their anger and inflammatory rhetoric in this way, though instead they labeled the women TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists, a word that has come to signify a modern witch, to be silenced, threatened, harassed, punched, and yes, killed. By the way, they didn't kill her, so I don't think that. I think they're kind of exaggerating.
Well,
but
I know this. I've been getting into this a lot. I plan on talking about this a lot on my podcast because a lot of women in general are starting to get worried about this. So, especially I think in Europe, they have passed the law where men are allowed to go into women's restrooms and locker rooms and stuff. So what I've seen, especially on Twitter, and I've been trying to keep up with a lot of people that are self-proclaimed TERFs now. I don't really get into those labels too much because that whole taking back an insult thing just doesn't make any sense to me. But even though we don't agree on certain things as far as like feminism and then saying hate speech, because I'm not one of those people that call something like that. I'd say it's just dangerous. So you have a lot of men that consider themselves women to be threatening women and saying there's a lot of examples. There's a lot of crime that isn't being documented because they want to make trans people seem like they're like the new thing to accept. So they're really nice, but they aren't. There are trans people I don't have a problem with. I'm not saying that, but there's also just men who have a perversion that are going to hurt women. And you have a lot of aggressiveness. You have a lot of sexual harassment online saying that, well, I think I'm a woman, so you should want to be with me. And then it just turns into the same conversations that we're used to having with straight men, where they just won't leave us alone. And it's not me, because I think that the political community that I'm in right now is way more right wing, and I do agree with a lot of men. I think that some of these feminist women have just completely they just kind of talk shit and shun off men, and I don't do that because I agree with men on a lot of things on this right wing issues, even sometimes very far right. So I don't think that'll be a problem with me. They'll probably just call me a Nazi or whatever, but I do agree with those feminists. I think I like that they're talking about as far as like a fourth wave where it's real feminism. It's like when like women who wanted to vote and get regular rights. Now we're gonna have to get in Europe at least, they're gonna have to try to get their restrooms and their locker rooms. And there's also like if you go to like a female gynecologist or something, you want that, you have to accept a trans person too, and it's not okay. So there have been a lot of and I see what you posted here too. There's a lot of threats. I mean, there's death threats, there's threats to beat women up, rape threats. It's just gotten out of hand. So it's something that needs to be talked about, and it's insane. So I obviously don't agree with some of the feminists, like really left wing sort of hate speech, whatever they have going on. But this is something that needs to be talked about for sure.
Yeah, and everybody can see here. You have this is. I mean, I guess it is an Antifa affiliated person, unless it's a troll, because there could always be a troll, correct? But it says TERFs got the wall after the revolution. This is a threat. I don't care about hate speech personally, but it is a threat. So threats are illegal. You're not allowed to issue threats on public platforms. So it says TERFs got the wall. This reminds me of an old saying: "TERFs got the wall. TERFs got the wall." It's become a slogan.
I've never heard that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. What they used to say, and I don't know if you're a fan of Tim Pool, who's I think he's an amazing journalist, and he's not a conservative.
Yeah, I like him.
But he said that, you know, from Antifa, they always say liberals get the wall as well. So this is a new mutation of that. So you have this thread. It says, "I heard a TERF got punched, so it's my duty as commander of armchair violence enthusiast Twitter to say, good job, nice work, keep it up." And then this person who I recognize her from somewhere, Zinnia Jones, says, "It'd be nice if there were roving gangs of trans women beating the shit out of transphobes, but alas, this doesn't seem to be the case." And like you're saying, the fact of the matter is that a transsexual who's going from male to female is usually still physically has an advantage over a man. In fact, I think there was one that almost squeezed Ben Shapiro like a ketchup packet. I remember watching that on TV.
I saw that.
So, yeah, that was I thought that was funny. I would have.
His hand was as big as his head.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm a woman.
Yeah, I think his reply was, "That's not very ladylike," but you know.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Zinnia Jones character is insane from what I've seen on Twitter. I think it's a dude. That I think it's the. I mean, look, I don't know. I don't even care about being politically correct anymore. I don't think that genuine trans people are actually this aggressive, or even, you know, they could at least admit that there's something wrong going on. But this Zinnia Jones character seems to be, I'm pretty sure, supposed to be a trans person or whatever. So not a woman, I don't believe.
So I think that, you know, to comment on this, one of the things I'm noticing here is, you know, put aside all of the identity issues. What does a man make? What does a woman make? You know, or what does a man constitute, or what does a woman constitute? What's this gender fluid thing? You know, what are the other? You know, there's basically all these people. They're making new identities out of Play-Doh. You know, that's. I mean, put that to the side for a second. The idea here is that people have forgotten how to have both a civil discourse and be able to joke with each other, because they've taken it so seriously. You know, I remember when, you know, this was in the era of grunge rock and gangster rap and things like that. You know, people did have some political beliefs, but they didn't get into fights over this. So, you know, there's also the issue right now of race and gender identity. So you may, I mean, I don't know, are you a white woman or whatever? So
yeah.
Is there an issue of race among the gay community that you know? Are there people who isolate each other due to the fact that they may be of a certain race or ethnicity?
I have no idea. Yeah, like I said, I've never really been in the gay community, so I'm not in one. I'm just me. I have no idea. Yeah, I'm white. I used to feel guilt for it. Now that's completely gone, I think. After seeing everything, I really don't care. You know, whatever people have to deal with on their own is what they have to deal with. Honestly, the world isn't easy. Reality isn't easy. So yeah, and I'm still gonna make fun of trannies. I know people don't have a sense of humor these days, but it's not gonna stop.
Right, and I think making fun of a transsexual, it doesn't mean that you're trying to. I mean, I guess there's a limit. You can't go and verbally harass somebody and chase them down the block. But saying a passing remark at somebody, I think I don't think, when I was a kid, that wasn't considered a crime. And I think that change has become you know, has kind of made the whole issue more and more militant and everything. But this is from, hold on, let me just highlight this so I can come back. But this is from The Cut, which is I think it's a feminist newspaper. It says, "Why I'm skipping the Pride Parade and going to the Dyke March," and in you know, to skip it because let's not read everything, but it says, "The commodification of queerness didn't bother me the first time I attended the march. I wore a rainbow TD Bank lanyard around my neck and cheered the Netflix float, carrying half the cast of Orange is the New Black. Yeah, I've seen that show. That show's okay. But after 3 years of sinking deeper into New York's LGBTQ community, I share the the discomfort I hear echoed in many of my groups of friends, that the Pride March is just good PR for the companies and politicians who participate in it, that it sidelines the trans women and people of color, that its air of celebration isn't in line with the reality of LGBTQ existence, even in the city, where in the past month, two transgender people were beaten and slashed in Brooklyn while walking back from a gay bar, and a lesbian couple was viciously attacked on the Q train. Right now, with LGBTQ rights under threat, I want to remind those in power that we can't be placated. So, I mean, yeah, if there were violent acts committed against people, then yeah, I guess she has a point about that. But what should that have to do with, with whether you go to one parade or another? I think it's kind of,
Yeah, no.
She's splitting hairs to a degree, and do you ever here's a question I wonder if you ever ask these people: is there ever a point where you're actually going to be happy because they call themselves gay, but they're I mean, it's kind of the opposite.
Yeah. Well, I think if they would get out of the identity politics and just be and stop trying to find a group of people, and this goes for everyone, stop trying to find a group of people that completely agree or that you're completely cool with, then they would be a lot happier, because you're not going to find that. Anybody can go to these parades. It's bullshit that people of color or trans people get excluded, just because I think that may be just a cultural difference between a majority of black people and a majority of white people. We're the same in a lot of ways, but we're different in a lot of ways. The way we act, the way we have fun, the way we celebrate. So yeah, okay, and yeah, white people make up around 70% of this country's population. So there's that. There's just no getting rid of that, hopefully. But yeah, I understand. I understand what they're saying. I've never tried to find a group though, as far as that goes. I'd like to go to I'd rather just go to like a pro-Trump rally at some point or something. I probably identify with those people more.
Are you a Trump supporter at all, or are you just more of a libertarian?
I like I'd say I'm probably, I don't know what to say here. I like a lot of the things that he's done. I root for him, obviously, because he's the president. I don't expect the president to fix everything, but I'm not against what he's done. I like the wall idea. Now that I've learned about a lot of the crime that goes on with legal immigrants, they shouldn't be here. They shouldn't vote. They shouldn't be taking our tax money. And actually, quite a few of the things, if he does, then I like it. I definitely think he's going to get reelected. And I like that because of what happened in the election, everyone seems to be arguing with each other, but I don't see it as a completely negative thing, because we're talking to each other. And I'm talking to people on the right that I never would have had conversations with. And we're understanding each other more. I understand the conservative side more. I understand the religious conservative side more. They should be entitled to their beliefs as well if they think that what I am is a sin and whatnot. I never want to erase that. I understand. So I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what we're all going to have to do. So there's not about finding groups and clumps of people. It's just talking to, that's why I want to reach out to these feminists that are more, I mean, I would probably even be considered a TERF. The left would probably consider me that. But then when the right talks about radical feminists, they're talking about like social justice warriors. So everything's messed up and there's labels and everybody calls themselves something, but it might mean something different. I think it's just important to try to bypass all those lines and talk about what the issues really are. And that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to find a group.
Well, do you have any religious beliefs at all, or is that kind of like, because in the past it was really a huge clash between people, especially of the Christian churches, especially the Catholic Church, for example, and gay people. Do you have any religious beliefs?
I think the whole establishment of churches and religion has always been an issue, because they can be hijacked and everything. But I used to consider myself more of an atheist, but I do believe in God now, and I do find it important to at least look into religion because it is an important part of this world, all the different kinds. So yeah, and there are a lot of things about Christianity that just make sense, you know. I mean, I don't see how people could argue with a lot of the Ten Commandments. There's a reason why we base a lot of the laws on, you know, no killing, no stealing. Seems like makes sense. And I think there's a lot more truth to some of the historic texts that people aren't looking into. And I've avoided because of the perception that I had of Christians, you know, of hypocrisy and everything. So I kind of judged religion based on the people who called themselves religious, and I can't do that anymore. So, yeah, no, I'm not religious, but I believe in God. Whatever that, you know, maybe it's just whatever that creation mechanism was, and evolution may very well exist along with it, but whatever made us, whatever event or whatever, something had to happen, right? So, and yeah, I don't really care if people say that I can't be that and be gay at the same time. I people just have to stop caring what other people think, I think.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for me, you know, the identity issue, being Jewish, you know, a lot of the people who go out there and they become symbols. For example, Sarah Silverman, who is one of the most famous Hollywood Jews. She's also incredibly atheistic. She openly says she doesn't believe in any other religion, has no concept of it, never has been interested in it. And you know, I think for somebody like me, very frustrating to hear somebody like that held up as a representative of you know, it's both my heritage and it's kind of it does formulate my faith. So you did get a chance to glance at that article that I wrote concerning Christine Quinn and Cynthia Nixon, and then Governor Cuomo of New York. So for those of you that don't know yet, and this is on the Hard News Network now, so some of you guys watch Hard News Network, which I do write for. There's a race going on in New York State for the new governor for 2018. Governor Cuomo is running again for a third term. And, you know, what happened was that Cynthia Nixon, who's the photo I'm actually hovering over right now, who is, I think, bisexual, is challenging Cuomo from the left. And therefore, Cuomo's ally, Christine Quinn, who is the former city council president and is gay and takes every opportunity to mention that, she mentioned that, you know, said publicly, I think she made a point of going public and saying, well, Nixon is an unqualified lesbian who didn't support a qualified lesbian when she ran for mayor. So, you know, you got to support Cuomo. So they got a lot of heat for that. Then Cuomo made some joke about Catholics not being able to dance, but or having no rhythm, but they have better rhythm than Jews at a black church.
Yeah, I saw that part. I'm like, what does that mean?
I thought it was awesome. I thought it was one of the funniest thing. I mean, it's almost Joe Biden worthy. But you know, it's not good for him because there's a large demographic of both Catholics and Jews in New York City, which is what he needs to win. So he can't. I mean, I guess Catholics aren't going to care because he is Italian. But I did go into this, by the way, and there's a video I released earlier, that there's a massive housing crisis in New York City where people are living in lead paint apartments, you know, and this is hundreds of thousands of people. And they're arguing about who's the qualified lesbian and whether Catholics and Jews have rhythm. So, if you were to, so what do you think of that situation? Is it kind of, do you think that it's dragging down the political discourse and making, you know, distracting entirely from actually solving any problems, or do you think, I mean, Cynthia Nixon is new, she is very progressive, she could present an alternative, it might not be one me or you would agree with, but do you think that she can get ahead of the whole lesbian issue in the election?
I think that she's kind of pushing the lesbian issue, to be honest. It's her platform. She doesn't really, I looked at her website. I didn't see any like program or anything as far as what she believes. She keeps talking about subways, taking selfies on subways, saying, look at these poor people beside me, and trying to take pictures with diverse people, you know. It's all identity politics for that. I don't understand what she's doing. She's a celebrity, she's an actress. I think she's just kind of there as a placeholder anyway. And then you have someone that's already been mayor for a while talking about identity politics when maybe he should be talking about issues. I'm sure he's talking about issues somewhere else. This is just what's being blown up. But it's just hilarious to see those two argue. I don't know much about New York, obviously. I know they have a lot of issues with crime too, and they don't seem to take care of their poor. The community doesn't. So they need to get on that. They need someone that's more on the right. I mean, this de Blasio guy. I mean, they're not talking. What are they talking about? They could talk about the fact that, you know, cars have ran into people and there have been terrorist attacks there, and there's a lot to talk about. So that is, who cares? When I heard the unqualified lesbian thing, I thought he was saying that she's an unqualified representative at first, and he was just kind of throwing the lesbian thing out there. I didn't think that he was actually saying because she didn't vote for somebody.
Oh no, it wasn't Governor Cuomo. It wasn't Governor Cuomo who said it. It was Christine Quinn, who herself is gay, but when she ran for mayor,
I see.
So, you know, she's
doing that Hillary Clinton thing, like if you don't vote for me because you're a woman, then that whole thing.
Absolutely, and the thing is that she blamed the whole reason that so to give a little context, although I've kind of gone over it several times on my show, and it is a little tiring because it's kind of ridiculous. But so in 2013, Mayor Bloomberg, who was hated by the left, was term limited, and he was hated because of stop and frisk, and because New York had become, as the current mayor Bill de Blasio said, it had become a tale of two cities. You know, there's the city of the rich and there's the city of the poor. And he was able to really use that to get a lot of progressive people, both rich and poor, behind him, which is, you know, it's just smart campaigning. You can hate de Blasio as much as you want, but he was correct. New York, if you're very rich, it's very good. If you're very poor, I mean, it's rough. And remember, there's bad weather there too. So Christine Quinn, she originally was the front runner, but then Anthony Weiner joined the race, and for a while he was the front runner until he basically discovered, you know, that Twitter is forever, baby. So,
yeah, there's a lot going on there.
So then that happened. He lost he started to sink in the primaries because he kind of didn't know how to handle it, and the person who started to gain from that was not Chris Quinn, but it was Bill de Blasio, who's basically, he looks like Big Bird. Let's try to get a photo of him. So
he's pretty pro-Muslim too. I think people had an issue with that. I don't know. I just think the whole Cynthia Nixon thing it's stupid. It's kind of a distraction. No one should take that seriously. No one should take her seriously as far as running.
So
they need someone that's more right wing in there.
But there's more. So this is here, let me show you. This is Mayor de Blasio, and he was also he's also married to a woman who used to be a lesbian, Charlene McRae, who was also black. So he's married to a lesbian. His kids are half black. One of them had an afro. It was the perfect storm of progressivism, and he looks like Big Bird. So I guess he won the election. I mean, he won the nomination first, but then he won the election, and he was just he's just been a disaster for the city. But because New York has become identified as so progressive, they don't have an alternative to him. And Chris Quinn could never Mark Anthony says his name is not Bill de Blasio. Changed my mind. That's correct. His actual name is Bill Wilhelm, because I think he changed his name to sound more Italian. But in any case,
Wow.
The issue is that yes, so Christine Quinn lost the race, and she's been butthurt over it since then because she believes in her mind that people voted for De Blasio because his wife was gay and his kid was black, and they were not able to bring themselves to vote for a woman and a lesbian. So now she's using it to vent on Cynthia Nixon, who, I mean, give her a chance. I think she's an idiot, and I hate Sex in the City.
I don't see where her platform is at all.
Right, but she's been running for office for 2 weeks, and she's been look. I think that if you want to run for governor of New York and you have an idea, any idea, the people have the right to give you their vote or not. There's a candidate who I follow in New York State named Larry Sharp, who has tons of great ideas. He happens to be a libertarian. I'm not. I don't like the Libertarian Party, but I think he's pretty good. I just have to say that. But if Cynthia Nixon wants to run, fine. If Governor Cuomo wants to run again forever, I don't care. I don't live there. But they split hairs here. And as I read into the NYCHA issue, NYCHA is the New York City Housing Authority. I realized that they're not running to solve the issues of these people. It's almost like they package these issues to use as campaign issues. But once the campaign's over, I mean, it's on to the next photo op.
That's what I see it as.
Right. If you actually solve the housing issue, and these are people who are between 400 and 600,000 people, they don't even know how many. But once you solve that issue, if you could, you have to find something else to complain about. So, you're kind of younger than me, but not by much. But in any case, what to you now? We've talked a lot about lesbianism. We've talked about libertarianism. We've talked about transgenders, but we haven't talked about what's important to you in politics. So you're starting. You've been writing and everything. What to you is the issue that you would push? Doesn't matter what it is, and how are you planning to get it out there?
Well, as far as politics go, I would like to see less power in the government. I think that gun rights are very important, and we cannot. I mean, there have already been laws placed on guns, and I think we need to focus here and realize how important it is to defend ourselves and see all the propaganda that's going on there. That I've been talking about a lot lately. Obviously, that's been a big issue. And because that affects everything. It doesn't matter what you are, whether you're like marginalized or you're afraid of being attacked, that you should be able to protect yourself. That would solve everything. If you have men coming into the restroom, if gay guys are beaten up for being gay, whatever, you should be able to protect yourself. That's very important to me. And taking personal accountability. And the whole public school system is pretty awful anyway. You're basically sending your kids there, not really understanding what they're learning. They're being brainwashed by a lot of these teachers, and so that I like Trump's stance on getting more charter schools, and homeschooling I think needs to be something more considered. I know it's hard for some people, but I would at least try. Just putting your kids in the hands of someone else and expecting them to teach them things is so weird. And I've been talking about a lot, and I like talking about politics more than identity politics, even though it's hilarious to talk about identity politics, because it's pretty obvious they're just using it as a marketing tactic to get elected. But yeah, right now I've been focusing a lot on gun rights. There will be some social issues too, obviously, because I think it all does play in together. But yeah, and then there's religious freedom too. I found myself taking up for a lot of Christians because they shouldn't have to get their beliefs compromised just because people are offended. And the immigration policy, it's really important. Like I said, I do support the wall. I do think the illegal immigrants they're trying to pass off as they just call them immigrants now. Really, a lot of them are just invaders, and a lot of them are bringing crime and drugs. We need to get on that because it is ruining their voting. They're getting government assistance. This is not how it was supposed to be. It's completely. It's it's crazy that they frame it as, of course, a racist thing, but it isn't. We just happen to be right next to Mexico, and we're not being invaded by Canadians. Thank God. I don't want to deal with those people. But yeah, I think those issues are very important to me, and I like that Trump has been lowering taxes too. I know that the president isn't completely responsible for bringing back jobs. I just like to see a society that's geared more toward, there's self-preservation and there's entrepreneurship and creating businesses that create jobs, that create, a society that actually runs well. And I think a lot of Americans have lost that hope that they have. It's been packaged up and marketed to them, but you need to have like a general hope where you focus on your community and building that and building your family and your life and being able to contribute in that way too. Because yeah, help this country a lot, and I think kids need to be encouraged to go into entrepreneurship and things like that a little more, and not see it as an impossibility, like you either have to be a millionaire or nothing. Those are the things that I think that are most important. Yeah, it's basically education, immigration, and still just upholding our freedom of speech. We're allowed to say what we want, and we need to keep saying it, even if America. We've always talked shit to each other. That's what we do. I've looked at old political cartoons; they're hilarious. Even from like around the 1800s. So we just need to keep being loud and then focusing on what we need to do as individuals to contribute to our own lives, because contributing to our own lives actually does help the greater good of this country.
So we, you mentioned a lot of things about gun rights and personal freedoms, and all that stuff is things that I, those are things I agree with 100%. Lately, there was the whole Stormy Daniels controversy in the media, but at the same time, we're seeing kind of the FBI in a state of total administrative rot. Are you thinking that maybe there's everybody's talking about how the media likes to promote this story. Stormy Daniels, I imagine for you, is kind of has to be like listening to the most boring shit in the world. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the meantime, I'm watching the stuff happening in the FBI. I'm watching, there's things Trump's doing, by the way, with the CIA and his foreign policy that I'm not a fan of. So, there's a lot of things that you're talking about that are kind of not in the public discourse. How do you get them back? How is it that you think that people can get back to focusing like issues like education and freedom of assembly and freedom of expression and all of that?
I think we're getting caught. I think it's easy to get caught up into a lot of the Stormy Daniels thing is just like the epitome of everything that they want us to pay attention to that doesn't matter, and it's hilarious. They're going on this like wild goose chase with a porn star, and it's just it's so funny. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of trying to pull back from that, and I have a hard time myself because it is fun to to talk about, but it's about focusing on maybe a smaller area, the local government and the community, which I would like to look into as mine too. Seeing what needs to be done, how you can help the like immediate surroundings that you're in, especially with people that are in Middle America, not in these like coastal yuppie cities. Like we have a lot of work to do. We've been completely just ravaged as far as jobs and stuff goes. There needs to be more people creating jobs. I know people always yell for job creation, but you can't just yell at someone else for job creation. We have to take initiative and do it ourselves. And if there are people that are, homeless or suffering in the community, there could be people could set up nonprofits to help them out. People could help other people, and even by providing jobs and things like that. So I think it's just about getting the focus away from. It's like New York. I don't know what the hell's going on there. I'm just glad I don't live there, and maybe just start learning more about what's going on in your area as far as government and what you can do to help the people, because it is ultimately up to us. I mean, the culture is what sways politics anyway. So we have to figure out what we deem as important.
Yeah, I think sorry I'm distracted, but what's his name? Dade Murphy is just talking all the time in the chat about Deadpool or something. So, he wanted to know if
I haven't looked at the chat.
Yeah, he was asking if you saw the chat, because he's been basically doing bench presses and all over the chat talking about something that I have no clue. Lex Luthor at one point, sounds very great, but so there were a couple issues. You mentioned gun rights. There was the March for Life, or March for Our Lives. March for Life is the anti-abortion one, right? The March for Our Lives was this weekend. And yes, it's kind of ironic that name matches. There's also what is it? Oh, they use the hashtag Never Again. I think they're still using that. That's actually ripped off from Holocaust survivors, and I could care. Yeah, I could care less. But what's your impression of that day? I'll give my impression after you. I don't know if I've addressed it on the show yet, but you live in the Midwest. I live in the Midwest. What's your take on it?
I think that it's similar to the Women's March in that you're going to get these large groups of people to show up because you're like, hey, so kids shouldn't be killed in school. And everyone's like, yeah, obviously. So everyone agrees with that. So it seems like a really general thing. So they're going to get a lot of people there. But then what you have at the front is that they're using these kids just to push this gun control agenda. So, and you look at the speeches, and I criticize what they say, and they use kids just so they can try to shut up the criticism. It's the only reason they're doing it. It's the same reason why they put minority groups in the front of marches, and just so they can get a photo op of a black person getting arrested and saying, oh, see, the police are racist or whatever. It's the same thing. So they put the kids up there. They're probably, kids are kind of manipulated these days into wanting fame anyway. So they have that. They're getting all this positive feedback. That's the best thing you can do to manipulate someone, is to give them a thumbs up all the time. And it's all part of me doesn't take it seriously at all. And then the other part of me thinks that I've seen people do interviews and go out to these places on YouTube, and you have people that know absolutely nothing about guns, but they don't even know what they're asking for. They're saying assault weapons, they're saying military grade. Those are both marketing terms. They're not being specific. They bring up the AR-15, which is just it's an American-made gun, and it's awesome, and you can customize it, and it's very good for home protection and in protection in general. So they're trying to go after that, which sometimes I think it has to do with it being American-made and American steel and all that too. I think there's something else going on there. But at the end of the day, it's about gun control. So it's like the biggest exploitation I've seen of this tragedy. They've been waiting for something like this to happen. What they're waiting for a right-wing Republican to shoot someplace up. That's what they want. Because so far it really has just been either you have a lot of them that were registered Democrats, and you have people that shouldn't have any business. I mean, they don't learn about guns anyway when they get them. Not that you can control that. That's why you need more good people with guns. But that's what it is. It's all about gun control. And I think a lot of people that show up there don't even know that they're fighting for anything. They're just showing up because they're like, kids shouldn't be killed. And yes, of course, it's awful. This is putting a band-aid on. That's the biggest issue, is that if we scale back gun rights or even get rid of a certain gun, it's going to be pointless. But not even that, but it's a band-aid to a much bigger problem, which is the fact that there's a person that wants to kill people. What is going on there? And it's happened. I mean, people have been killed throughout history. It's never stopped. It's actually getting better when you look at the statistics. And this is about the time that in other countries, I've seen, like in the UK and Australia, when it starts to dip and the violence goes down, this is when they're like making a big deal about it. So then they can impose like gun control, take away guns, and then they can say, hey, look, it's going down, and say it's that. But it's not. It's just the fact that people are getting along better. That's what I think. It infuriates me.
Yeah, I think I had an argument earlier in the day with a couple people from, and many of them were from Canada, and and from New Jersey, which is, you know, I guess Canada looks good compared to New Jersey, but in any case, what happened was that they were preaching that this march was amazing, and that like every civil rights, like every march, and every civil demonstration, it will yield results. And you know, I started getting sarcastic with the guy who's somebody I've had on the show, by the way. Not going to say who it was, but this was a guy. I said to him, "Okay, what about the Farrakhan's Million Man March?" And he said, "Well, oh, that doesn't count." I said, I mean, but didn't that yield results? Oh, wait, no, black people didn't get reparations. And then he starts getting, you know, kind of testy with me. And I said, well, look, you live in Canada. You don't understand that in this country, the foundation was based on the idea of individual rights, and the Bill of Rights is something that has been kind of a unique factor here that has separated us even from, you know, the British Commonwealth, which I also admire, you know, which I've studied as well. But, you know, we take those rights seriously, and maybe not seriously enough. You know, the Fourth Amendment with the Cloud Act was violated this week with the whole omnibus spending bill. So I said to him, if you are so for gun control regulation, then please specify what you mean by it. So he started getting, you know, cute about it. He's like, well, I mean, obviously nuclear weapons are restricted. And I said, you know, nuclear weapons have always been first of all, the technology, a lot of it is the proprietarily owned by the government anyway. And it has been leaked out. That's how the Soviet Union got the bomb. That's how China got the bomb and everything. So yes, there's control over nuclear technology, but you can see even in those cases that control can be given away. Bill Clinton gave away a lot of the nuclear ballistic technology, not for fissionable explosions, but for the ballistic missile technology. He ended up giving it away to China for campaign donations. So to fast forward, he did not want to he said, I'm in Canada, I don't get into U.S. politics, so I don't have any proposals, and I don't want to get into all the laws. I said, well, you don't have any idea. You're just supporting something that you don't know. Date's saying you've been the best guest ever. Really good young lady.
Oh,
so, and he said earlier that he's adopting you.
Good, I need that.
so in any case, let me see, what else did we have to talk about? I think what I did want to mention, and I'll let you have the last word before we go. And, you know, if you need kind of a prompting, then I can give you. But there are a couple users on YouTube that I do want to introduce you to. One of them is Alicia Clegg, who, as of right now, I don't think she has live streaming privileges. Okay. So she can talk a lot about both education and the transgender issue, and also living in I think she did live in Utah, and homeschooling as well. Yeah, she's an amazing resource. I don't know if you've heard of her yet.
No, I haven't.
And then Anthony Logan, who I think all of the users today who have been in the chat watch, and you know, most of us have found each other from there. He has show tomorrow, so I can give you the info to call in if you want tomorrow at 8. Kind of a conservative, straight up conservative person who's also, I believe, an Afro-American. If you look at him, I think everybody can agree on that, right? So what about, looking forward? I know you're not on YouTube yet with any content. What's your next goal? And, where can people find you?
Well, I'm pretty active on Twitter right now. The handle is, so it's Libertarian LES. That's all that would fit. And then GAB, Libertarian Lesbian. Minds, I'm on there. And I am going to start YouTube content. I do plan to make some podcasts, and that's always been the goal. I'm getting some equipment together. It's been a really weird year. And then, so that's basically on my Twitter. I actually have the handles to my GAB and my Minds too. So I'm thinking YouTube, and then BitChute I hear is good. So I'll probably be doing that. I'll try to do that more. And then my website's libertarianlesbian.com. And I have a few articles on there. I have a few articles on Halsey News and New Media Central. I have an article there. It's also on my website. So I'll keep updated on Twitter and GAB and Minds and things like that. But I plan to get on that soon as far as making content, videos, and audio. That's my next thing.
Yeah, I actually have been in contact with Halsey lately because he's doing a lot of streaming. So, hopefully, we can move in some more circles. You're welcome back here anytime. Yeah.
Cool.
I stream all the time, especially Sundays. So we can have you on. We have a certain gentleman named Alex who's really hardcore Christian. And if you're ever interested in debating, he wants to ban porn.
Okay.
How about it?
Banning things doesn't seem to work. But I get the idea that porn is I didn't really have an opinion on it. I didn't used to, but I started looking into the more when I see the right wing, and then they have that whole MGTOW no fap thing. I see that the damages, people can get addicted to it. As far as banning goes,
there's a no fap thing on MGTOW now. Jeez.
Well, I think it's always been there. I don't know if they're connected. I wouldn't listen to me as far as I'm not a representative at all for that. But as far as you can talk to men about that. I don't know. But yeah, no, it is damaging. I think even the social, I don't know how to say it, the culture on the internet has probably brought the viewership down quite a bit from getting guys to, stop kind of. I think guys get addicted to it, and that's one of the issues. I think Jordan Peterson has talked about it, and then everybody just kind of focusing on maybe, doing something with their lives instead of kind of obsessing over that. I think it sucks people in. It's very damaging. So yeah, that'd be a good conversation to have. I still have a lot to learn on that because I don't understand it anyway.
Well, you have to see. I had a debate with him. There was a feminist who was supposed to show up who never showed up. So it had to be me against Alex, and I was just goofing on him because he just kept saying it ruins families, and I'm like, I don't care about your family. People want to surf the internet. So maybe anybody interested in watching another porn debate with maybe you can join. Maybe we'll find somebody who's one of these TERFs or something. We'll figure it out. Of course, you can find her at all of those addresses in the chat, Twitter, Gab, YouTube, and that's about it. So Franz wanted to know if you'll join ABL's Discord, so I'll send you the info for that if you are. And that's about it. Anything else?
Sounds good. Oh, I know I had a question somebody sent me that said something about the first libertarian book. I'd say that my the political beliefs weren't really shaped as much by like the political philosophy books. It was more the fact that I was looking into like personal development and entrepreneurship the entire time. That's what kept me out of the left. So I'd say Tim Ferriss's book, 4 Hour Workweek, helped a lot. The E-Myth by Michael Gruber. And then I like Andrew Breitbart's book I listened to on audio. I think that if anybody's going from left, they're kind of getting out of the left, they should read Andrew Breitbart's book. I forget the entire name, but definitely look that up. He's very important.
Okay, so that's about it. Everybody, please like the video, share the video, subscribe. Check out Libertarian Lesbians content on all the channels. Please share my content, and have a great evening and great Wednesday too.